right. Welcome back to the Board Drill Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Bradburn, here with my co-host, Matt Dixon. Tonight, we have a very special guest. It is Cruton Week here on the Board Drill Podcast. So we have collegiate coaches from all across the board, from JUCO all the way through FBS this week. So we're going to start off with Coach Kyle Gallagher with the Cortland Red Dragons. He is the wide receivers coach. Coach, welcome to the show and congratulations on being the national champions this year in Division III.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate you guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, Coach, we're going to get into recruiting here, but the first thing, I always ask guys fresh off a championship is, have you gotten the rings in yet?
So actually, no. So how we're going to do it is, so spring ball, like we're in the middle of spring ball right now, and it's been the plan to, the last day of spring ball, we have kind of a recruit day, and all of our incoming recruits for next class come up and watch us practice. They're in meetings and everything. And afterwards, we have like a little barbecue with them. Yeah. So we're actually going to do the rings on that day. So that's going to be April 28th, where we'll have the recruits there. We'll have the seniors from last year's class there, and then the current team. So that's going to be a pretty special day, and definitely a date that the guys on our team have circled for sure.
Yeah, that's such a really good job of slipping that date in there perfectly, Coach. I appreciate that. That's a great little sly recruiting pitch, but that's a really great idea of doing the ring presentation in front of recruits. Your guys are going to be super excited to get their rings. They're going to be ooh and on, and now the next crop of kids is coming in going, I want to win one of those. I want to come here. So that's a great idea. So tonight we're talking all about recruiting. The very first one will probably be the lengthiest question. Can you talk about your recruiting schedule kind of year round, how it goes, when you guys really start to dig into what classes and how that works?
Yep. Yeah. So this current class, or the class of 2024, we finished up this class around February-ish. And then from that point on, like we start to really dive into the 2025 recruits. I think March, April, and the March beginning of April is when we really start to look at certain recruits to email us, or on certain platforms that we think that could fit at our program. And then once spring ball ends, so at the end of April for us, that's when we really start to kind of ramp up our recruiting process for the next year's class. So in this case, it'll be 2025. But so as I said earlier, April 28th is our last day of spring ball. And then we'll have like a week where we just kind of, dot some I's, cross some T's, finish some things up. And then after that, we'll all our entire staff will go on the road, meeting with recruits, meeting with coaches, going to different schools and things like that. And pretty much just, getting our name out there, seeing who's interested in us. And then from there, we kind of, we watch all of our individual prospects that we have. We each have like an area of New York, area of the Northeast, and whoever we meet, like we have to, look at everything that they're involved with, and then obviously, watch some film, see if they're really interested, things like that. And then from there, we kind of start making from there we go to the summer, and then in the summer, so at Division III, we don't really have a dead period, so we can kind of talk with them throughout the entire process. But in the summer, that's really the time where we don't necessarily like set many things up. We have 2 camps scheduled, 2 elite single day camps scheduled that, all recruits are welcome to. And that's one way that we get to see you in person, which is always good. I think that's good. And then also, we get to see you practice, and compete, but we also get to start to build some relationships with guys that we may be interested in. And with some guys that are interested in us as well. So, and then on top of that, we'll be at other camps throughout the Northeast, really. Like Best New England camp, things like that. Bigger camps that have a bunch of coaches will be there, and we'll communicate with some players there as well. But then once that's over, like the camp season, so pretty much when July hits, from that point on, we really don't. Like, obviously, we'll be in touch with some recruits here and there, but we're not like heavy on recruiting at that point in time. So then we get back on campus. We're in camp in the camp season right when we get back. So it's like, August, the kids report. Then we go right into camp, which is basically football all day. And during that time, we don't do any recruiting because we're pretty much ramping up, getting ready for the season. And then once camp's over, and classes start, and now obviously the students got to go back to classes, or players got to go back to classes. Then we'll continue the recruiting process. So how we do it is we have game day visits every single home game that we have. So we'll invite the prospects that we're interested in to those game days, and we'll send an invite out, and they'll pick whichever game is best for them. It doesn't really matter for us, like the order or whichever game is best. So they can come. Then they'll get a little presentation from our head coach, and then they'll get a tour, and then they'll be able to watch us warm up on the field, and then they'll be in the stands for the game, and then they'll kind of go their separate ways. And then as our regular season comes to an end, that's when we really start to create our recruiting boards, and we put all the prospects that we think have a chance of getting offered by us on recruiting boards that are position specific, and from that point on, we invite when our season's over, we invite the top recruits to our official visits, and our official visits are either in December and January, or this past year they were all in January because we were still playing in December. So I think, and it really is dependent on the year of like what number of recruits that we have. We're a school that doesn't necessarily need a bunch of recruits to come in. Like, we can be more targeted with our recruits. So if we have, say for instance, we have 8 quarterbacks and none of them graduate, like, we're probably only going to bring in maybe 1 quarterback or something like that. So like the numbers could change every single year dependent on our roster and what we need specifically. So so from that point on, that's when we'll really be targeted, get guys to campus, and then from that, and then there we'll have the official visits, and then after that process, it's pretty much just a waiting game, and we're very specific in our number as well. Like, if we we'll pick a number that we need, and we more times than not will not go over that number, and we're very forward with communicating that to our recruits, just so they know, like, hey, if something were to happen here and say this guy commits before you, like, then unfortunately the spots would be taken, just because we have a certain number of lockers and we want to stick to that number. But then from that point on, we're to the end of January, excuse me, beginning of February, and then our class begins to finalize. So that's pretty much our full yearly recruiting process, I would say.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff covered there, obviously, going throughout the year. And at your level, it's very different than some of the other levels. And the idea that I've heard from a lot of coaches, and you can confirm this, but a lot of coaches in the Division III range is, hey, we're going to recruit, but like you said, at some point we kind of sit back and go through the season, because honestly, we may lose some of those guys, right? They may get a D2 offer or FCS offer or something like that, and then all of a sudden, right, they're gone. So if we're kind of setting eyes on a guy in August and we're really counting on him, by December he could be long gone, right? And that happens even all the way through the FCS level as well. So that's always something I've heard from coaches, is like, we don't like to fall in love too early. Because the guy blows up and has a great year. It's like, okay, well, it was nice to meet you. See you later.
And like you said, that's definitely something that we have to take into account as well. If we have a prospect that we really like, and he does have a great year, and all of a sudden, like, he gets offered by say like a Syracuse or something like that, then we start to look a little bit further down the board, because at that point, like, even we would say, like, hey, if you get an offer from Syracuse, like, you should take that. Like we're very honest with the kid as well. If he really wants to come here instead of that, like, then we'll take him. But for the most part, like, we'll say, hey, it's okay, we understand. Like,
and coach, you just never know. You keep that relationship with transfer portal and everything else. Even if a guy goes to a bigger school, you just never know when you're going to cross paths with them again. And if you were someone that instilled someone really, a good relationship with that kid, when he's looking to leave somewhere, he may be like, you know what, I really liked him. So that's always a piece of it, So going back, you kind of touched on camps. So kind of 2 questions here. How important is it for you to get a kid to your camp on campus? And then how good are those super camps for kids to attend, right? We ran one when I was at Mercer, and there's like 136 schools there and all that stuff. Are those really effective? Do you guys really like them? Or is it way more important for them to get to your campus and do that camp?
Yeah. So for us specifically, I would say it's more important for them to come to our camp, just because at our camp, it's really just us there that are coaching. So we can build more of a like I said earlier, we can build more of a relationship with the player, and they can kind of, and we're the ones that are they're coaching all the drills as well and kind of running the camp. So like they can kind of see how we coach. They can decide if they like it or not, and then we can kind of see them in a more specific, more targeted way, I think, as well. So I think, and personally, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. Obviously, it might be a little biased, but I think that's kind of the best of both worlds, where like they can kind of see what we do, we can kind of see what they're all about, and kind of go from there. So I will say, the bigger camps, it is very hard to watch specific players, because there's sometimes like 800 kids at certain camps. It's like that's tough to get around, and for the most part, if players just see that you're there, like sometimes they'll come up to you, or things like that, and I think that's where that kind of benefits, where they see you and they're like, okay, Cortland, like I've heard of them, or I want to go introduce myself to them. Like I think that's where that is. But in terms of like us, being targeted with that at the bigger camps, like it is very difficult. Because sometimes you're working those camps, or whatever it is, and then you can't get around to kind of see certain players. But I do think like the big camps, more times than not, it's just hard to kind of build that relationship, see them specifically, and kind of things like that. But so like I was saying, I just think if you go to like a specific camp, like a school's camp, and it's like just them, whether it's D1, D2, or D3, I think those are more beneficial for high school players. Now the hard thing about that is the fact that they kind of have to start to narrow down where they could potentially like to go, probably earlier than they would like. But I think if they're willing to do that, and they have like a kind of a leg up on where they think they could want to go, I think it's better for them to go to those certain schools to get kind of like I said, to build that relationship and then kind of get that experience of being there. So, I think, because you talk to some coaches and they're big on just going to the big camps because like, there's going to be a bunch of coaches there. But, I just think it's hard for the coaches to make the rounds in those environments.
Yeah, coach. And the other part that it brings is it shows you that the athlete's interested in your school, right? If he's taking time out of his day and using, his time, his spare time to come to your camp, it's showing you guys he has an interest in your school. And I think that's missed on a lot of high school players and their families, that, hey, you got to show that interest back to the school. That's a big part of it. Coach, you talked about getting out on the road, your assistant coaches breaking up and scattering through New York. Being down here in Florida, it was always just coaches constantly coming in the door. Always had to make sure I had about 50 of my prospect sheets ready to go. Yeah. So that was always one thing as a high school head coach that I was worried about, college coaches coming through. Can you kind of lay out what you ideally want to see on that prospect sheet that the high school coaches, when you walk in the door, here's a basic information on our kids. What are you looking to see on that, and what's helpful to you guys?
Yeah, so I think just the basics are always good. So obviously like their name, position, things like that, and then maybe height and weight, which we will also be able to see if we see them in person. But then I think a big thing for us is I think just a link for their film, and that could be good at for before we get there as well, just because it's not like basketball or baseball where you can go watch them play games in like the summer. Like in football, you really don't have that, because when you're in season, like you need all the coaches with you at your games. Yeah. So you never really have a chance. Like there's a unique time, or maybe once in a while you can go see a game, but it's hard to see them play in person. So I think just getting that film, sent out ahead of time, or even just right after, like either way, just because that's going to be like our main evaluating tool. And I think that that can kind of stink at sometimes. You kind of miss some things on the film because obviously they all the kids only put their good highlights on there, which they absolutely should. But like you don't have the luxury to like go to a basketball game in a gym and see, all right, whistles blown, like what happens when there's no game going on, like how's their body language, are they communicating with their teammates, how do they react to or how do they communicate with their coaches, and just all those things. So yes, the film is very important. And I would say just a general idea of what their GPA is going to be at that point, because obviously they'll still have a senior year to go. But most schools need to know that, because there's, some schools need to know ahead of time, because if they're heavily recruiting a guy and all of a sudden they find out, he has a 60 average, it's like, well, he's not going to be able to get in. And that was almost time a little wasted right there.
Yeah.
But, just things like that, I think that are just a base. And then once we meet them or, talk to you about them as well, I think then we can kind of have a good idea going forward about what we need to look for, the different types of questions that we need to ask, to find out more about them.
Yeah, and I think sending out links or having a way you could link it to your sheet for film would be great. You're also assuming that high school kids know what good highlights look like. So that's that's risky there. I can't tell you how many college coaches I'd have come sit down in my office and is this him? Is this him? Is this the right kid? Pulling up the film on their phone. I never had that correct way. I guess I could have done a little QR code or something like that. That would have been cool. But
well,
learn as you go.
Listen, QR codes were not widely used until COVID. In fact, when I worked in Florida State recruiting, we started to try to do QR codes, and this is way back in 2013, 14, on the graphics that we sent out, and very few kids actually did it. And then COVID hit, and we were like, man, we were ahead of the times. Boys, we were like 8 years ahead. So real quick, on that prospect sheet, if you're listening, a coach actually that came across on Twitter today, his name is Zach Payne. He is the D-line coach, I don't know, in Lenoir City, Tennessee. I guess it'd be Lenoir City or whatever. He actually shot out a prospect sheet. I don't want to pull it up because it has kids' information on it. But he put out one on Twitter that's fantastic. Coach Dixon, all you guys, it's name, phone number, Twitter, position, height, weight, GPA, and test score, and they all have them in there, including ACT. Stats, notes, offers, a player picture, and updated film link. So I was pretty impressed by that. I looked through that and I was like, man, if every coach had that going around, there'd be a lot of happy college coaches going through there. So.
We all know that high school coaches lie on stats, though. Like, we can eliminate stats from that.
We won't get in this tonight, but tackles is the worst recorded stat in all of high school football. I used to record guys on 60 tackles a year, and then other guys would have, some guy that was way worse than us and 130 tackles. I'm like, stop it. Get out of here. You have 10 games in high school. If he's got 130 tackles, he should be an FBS player right now. Yeah. Coach, real quick, every player's over 6 foot, correct?
Oh yeah. No, that is something that, obviously when we see him in person, we're like, okay, this kid is a little bit shorter than what he was listed or what everyone's been talking about. But yeah, that's kind of a common problem that is throughout college. Like, they list heavier as well on their weights, because I think they're just assuming like, okay, if they get to college, like by the time they get there, they'll be that weight. But the height thing, that's a little different, because you don't see many people growing too many inches when they get to college. But,
Coach, when I was at Florida State, between me and the 2 other assistants there, we were notorious for being very harsh measurers. I mean, we got it exact, but we were heels on the ground, completely planted. We put the level on their head.
Oh yeah.
To do that, we did wingspan. I mean, we did all kinds of stuff, hand size, all that stuff. But I can't tell you how many kids will come up. No, I'm 6'5". No, you're 6'3.5". No, I'm 6'5". You guys just can't measure. Okay. Well, you know what, buddy? Jimbo Fisher's going to be a lot more mad at me if I get this wrong than you are. So I'm good with it. So
yeah, exactly. We're the same way when it comes to measuring height. We put the thing on their head, make sure it's like, okay, this guy's listed at 6'1", but he's actually 5'11". It's like,
And we would push down hairstyles of all different kinds. We would push it down. So speaking of Twitter, Coach, when you come across a high school player's Twitter, what needs to be in the bio? I've heard people talk about this all the time. I know what we liked, but specifically to you, what do you want to see in that bio?
Yeah, I think the same thing or similar things that they would send out on the prospect sheet. I think, just their high school, and then their position, whichever one or both, if they play offense and defense. And then I guess their height and weight, but eventually, like we were just talking about, like we'll be able to figure that out later on.
Yeah.
And then, from there, I just think a link whether it's in their bio or just throughout their, or whatever it is, a link for their film. And then, I think those are kind of the main things that we need in there. Because I think at the end of the day, like the film is going to be the thing that kind of, whether recruits you or recruits itself. And I think for us, what we get is through communication with the player or the coach about who the player is going to be.
Yeah.
Our head coach is very, very big on, we will not offer anybody until they come to campus and meet us in person. So whether that's a game day visit, whether it's an official visit, whether that's to one of our camps, like we are not going to offer you, we don't care how good you are, until you come see us, come meet us. We meet parents, wherever it is. So I think for us specifically, like those things are going to get you kind of in the door, but like then you gotta be willing to come see us, because that also, like you said earlier, Matt, that also tells us like, hey, you're interested in us, right? So I think that's something that's big for us, in the recruiting process. So we don't necessarily look too much into Twitter bios. I know some schools may, but as our head coach always says in all of our recruiting pictures, is like Twitter is like the least important part of recruiting. Like, yes, it is good to have, and it's part of like the new generation, but like for the most part, like we want to see how we want to see how you interact with us, how you interact with our current players on our team, and things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. You just kind of briefly talked about getting on campus. So can you kind of real quick talk about official/unofficial visits and how it works with you guys?
Yeah, so a lot of our unofficial visits are on our game day visits, like I was saying. So we would invite you up, and then you come up and then our head coach gives a presentation. You get a tour, and then you're on the field for our warm up session, and then you're in the stands for the game. And afterwards, if you want to stick around and talk to us, like we'd be more than willing to do that. And then whenever throughout the week, if you're going to be on campus, seeing us, or you just want to come visit, you just reach out to us. Like we're always more than happy to show you around, or you can watch practice for a little bit. But obviously you're in season 2, so that's kind of rare. And then once the season's over, like we'll have people that you say, hey, I'm going to be touring campus. Can I stop by after my tour and come meet with you guys? And like, we'll just sit with them, talk with them for about half hour, hour, whatever it is. But then our official visits, so 2 years ago, I think we had 4. This past year, we had 3. And we do those always after the season. So this year, we actually had to cancel a few in December. But our official visits, like you come on campus, and then it's the exact same thing. Like our coach gives a presentation. You hang out. The biggest difference between our official and unofficial is that on the officials, you get to see our players. You get to interact with our players. And at the end of the day, like that's what we're most interested in. Because we really love to hear and respect our players' opinions on certain kids, and because during our official visit, we're able to separate the parents from the kid, and I think that kind of helps. Whereas like we send out the kids on tour with some of our coaches and with the players, and then the parents stay back with our head coach, have a Q&A session, because at times they don't want to ask questions when their kids are there. So it's good. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, where they get to ask questions to our head coach without the kids there. Now the kids get to interact with the players without their parents there. So I think that's kind of a key part in our recruiting, where that's where we get to really see kind of what's going on and what kind of kids they are. And then we reconvene at lunch after both separate tours. And then, now the parents and the kids have 2 separate experiences they can come talk about, kind of go from there. But then after that, we go back, and then we have either another tour and also like a film session where it's, offense, defense, we kind of split up there. And then when the offense is, say, watching film and touring, then that's when the defense is individually meeting with their head coach, and then, they would flip and vice versa. And then after that, they'd kind of be, they'd go on their way or whatever it is. So I think, I think it's a perfect amount for them to kind of, get on campus, see everything. We tour all the classrooms, all the facilities, everything like that. And then also just, for us to see kind of what they're all about as well. So I think, the timing's perfect. Our head coach has been doing this for a while, and I think he's come close, and you're never perfect, but he's come close to having a really great day for the kids, for the players, for all the coaches. And I think, for the most part, we hear a lot of positive feedback post official visits. So, that's kind of how our officials go. And then once our officials are done, like we'll take, say if a certain recruit that we really like couldn't make it to one of those because they had basketball, whatever they had, then they can always reach out to us, come up for a day visit where it's not necessarily a full official visit, but like, they'll eat with some of our players, meet some of our players, and it'll be kind of a shorter official visit day. So, but yeah, that all kind of goes back to, like I said, like our head coach, very adamant of you got to be on campus before we offer you. And I think that's a perfect way to do it. Honestly, I think we've gotten some great kids that way. So I think very thankful to be at a school that does it that way. So props to our head coach, Coach Fitz, on that one.
Coach, who's more important to impress, mom or dad?
Oof. I think it depends. I think it depends, but maybe at the end of the day, like school wise, probably mom, and then football wise, probably dad.
It's mom,
yeah.
Coach.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Coach, that was my job. I had the mom every time on recruiting.
Really?
I had the mom.
Important job. Very important
every
job.
time, every single time I had the mom. So all right, getting back to it, what can a high school coach do to help you in this process? A coach says, hey, I want to make sure to give my kids all the opportunities possible. What can I do to help my kid get to a Cortland or get to another school like that?
Yeah. So I think, just having an open line of communication. A lot of the way we do it is right around now, actually, right around the beginning of April, like we'll send out certain emails asking for certain prospect lists, like we talked about. And then from there, we watch their film, we kind of decide, things like that. And then when we go on the road, then, we can have more of a relation, or we can start to build more of a relationship with like the certain players that are going to be in the room with us, meeting with us. So just having that open line of communication to send us the prospect list, then help us send up or set up a certain, date and time for the visit. And then I think the biggest thing is just try to be as honest as possible. I know, and we totally understand that you want that as a head coach, like you want to get your player to a certain level, to a certain college. But at the end of the day, like the more honest you are with us, like the more that's gonna help, or make us want to come back to you for say a player at another school or a player that you have in the coming years. But I think that's kind of, and like I said, we understand that's a tough balance to have. But just the honesty, because if you say, hey, I think these three kids can play at your school, and then we watch their film and none of these kids can play there, right? or yeah, it happens sometimes, and and we're kind of going, so it's just it's tough, and we understand it, but just the more honest you are, the more we're going to trust you, the more we're going to come back to you, and from your perspective, the more it's going to help future prospects of yours as well, I think. But yeah, so I think just being honest and having that open line of communication, whereas, down the road, we really like this kid. Hey, can I give you a call and talk to you about, certain things that he may have, like his grades, or how does he play in practice or anything like that. So now I would say in terms of for us, that those would probably be the most important things.
Yeah. Like you said, it's kind of a delicate balance. You guys got to recruit the right guy because your job's on the line. They want to get their kids recruited because sometimes their job's on the line and parents are pressuring them. So it's really a delicate ecosystem. No one really wants to break that, but at the same time, they still want to be successful doing the relative things. I know Matt's been a part of that. When I was a head coach, I was only head coach for a year at high school. I didn't really have to worry about that too much, but Matt, you've kind of been a part of that of parents, why isn't my kid getting offers and why isn't he doing that? And it's a delicate ecosystem, just like, well, your kid sucks, that's why, or something like that. So, or the other thing is, hey, your kid's a Division III football player, and there's nothing wrong with that, but quit thinking that he's going to Florida State, because he's not.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, Kyle. One of the hardest things, sorry, Coach, one of the hardest things about being a high school coach in the recruiting process is dealing with the parents and making sure that you're trying to lead them down the right path and not overblow the situation, but also make sure that they're keeping the kids interested and contacting back the schools that they should be. But you get a lot of the parents that are just unrealistic. Coach, can you kind of talk to? I'm not saying really talk to the parents, but maybe talk to the coach who has to talk to the parents about a Division III school and getting an offer from a Division III school. How does that kind of differ from what they would see from an FCS or an FBS or a Division II school? How is Division III a little bit different if a coach is trying to explain that to a parent?
Yeah, so I think in terms of being different from kind of the FBS schools is we can't offer any money, but as I was saying earlier, for us specifically, like we offer roster spots, where some schools they'll take anybody because they need for admissions purposes. So like they'll say, hey, like we're offering you and then you just come. But we're a school that can be very targeted. So when we kind of say, hey, we're offering you a spot, like that's basically your ticket to come. If we don't offer you, then you would have to get in on your own and then go through the walk-on process. So I think the biggest difference would be the fact that you don't that we can't give any money. But like you said earlier, like I think like Division III football, like there's a lot of good football that goes on. And now the fact that we kind of went all the way, like we got to see some extremely good teams where it's like there are definitely Division I players in Division III playing right now. So just because you get offered by a certain Division III program, like that's nothing to be like, oh, what's D3? Like I want to go D1. Like there's a lot of good football being played out there, whether it's D1, D2, or D3. So, but I think that difference of having that money attached to it and not having that money is kind of the biggest thing. But as a D3 coach, like you kind of understand that everyone's goal is to go Division I, get a scholarship, right? Because obviously college these days is pretty expensive. But at the end of the day, when we offer you, that means that we did our research. You came to campus. We compared you to a bunch of different recruits, and like we really liked you, and we think, and we really, really want you on our team. So I think at the end of the day, it is still an extreme compliment to the player. But obviously, the money I would say is probably the biggest difference.
Well, it absolutely is a compliment. I mean, that's going. I mean, the kid's worked at his craft for years, and here you come saying,
yep.
we want you to be part of what we're trying to put together, and that should be one of the greatest compliments a kid can receive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the other piece to it is how you described who you are. Schools are different at every level, even within the level, right? Some Division III schools bring on 80 kids a year, and they have 150, 160 kid rosters. And so, it's a different world there than it is in a place where you said where it's like, hey, we're only going to offer as many as we have lockers. I assume you guys don't have 180 lockers. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, we're at 126, so that's our number.
Which is about what most teams carry. Even at the FBS level, you got 85 scholarship kids. You probably have roughly 30 to 40 walk-ons. You're going to have 120 something kids on your roster. So that's a lot more feasible. And then, a lot of high schools will carry, if you did varsity and JV, somewhere around 120 kids. So yeah, that makes complete sense. And so it's like you said, Division III, listen, my freshman year, Division III, the best wide receiver in Division III was Pierre Garcon. Played in the NFL for a long time. His backup was Cecil Shorts III, who also played in the NFL for a long time. So there's definitely some talent anywhere you go in any version of football, especially, around in this country. So, a lot of times at Division III level, besides you guys going out and doing some of your research, can you talk a little bit about if a player wants to express interest to you? So if I'm an 18-year-old kid and I think I'm a pretty darn good player and I think I can play for you, how do I reach out to your school and express interest?
Yeah, so I think email is probably the best way to get in touch with us. All of our coaches' emails are on the Cortland website, the Cortland Athletics website. So I think that's kind of the best way. And then from there, we kind of and like we said, it would probably be best to attach everything that you would put on the prospect list and then attach film. But from that point on, we can kind of watch the film, and then after watching the full film, if we think there's a potential there, then we can kind of run it by like maybe one of the coach to see what he thinks, or like his specific position coach to see like, hey, do you think this kid can play for us or anything like that? And then from there, then we'll pretty much respond to everybody. But then from there, we can exchange numbers. We'll invite you to our camp to kind of see you in person, continue to build that relationship. And then from there, it's like I've kind of been saying this whole time, just the in-person contact is just going to be needed at some point in time during our process. But I think the initial way to kind of get in contact with us is through email, or if say you're going to a camp in the summer and you're doing your research on certain schools that are going to be there, because sometimes the coaches send out a list, and then you see that say for instance Cortland's going to be there, and all of a sudden like you look up some stuff on us and you're interested, then if you see us at the camp, come meet us. Like that's also a great way, I think, to kind of get in touch with us. But for the most part, like I think the most successful way to get in touch with us would be email. And then from there, we can exchange numbers or do anything like that. And also Twitter as well, I think is like, yes, it is the least important part, but it is a great way to communicate. And I'll get a bunch of DMs from certain recruits there as well. So I think, whichever is easier for the player. So if he has a Twitter and he's very comfortable on Twitter, like just send out a DM. Or if he maybe doesn't have a Twitter, which some kids still don't have a Twitter, then you can go on the Cortland Athletics website, go to the football, see all the coaches, and then just find an email us, and then we'll get back to you. So those are probably the two best ways to get started, and then from there we kind of build on that.
Coach, I'm absolutely appalled. You didn't say that they should sign up for a recruiting service. I mean, that's that's what people pay for, right? That's where the money is.
Yeah, I know.
Oh God, here we go.
I'm kidding,
Coach. Kind of going through that piece right there. Are there any other documents or anything along the line of your school? Obviously, like you said, you guys don't offer athletic scholarships. So do you guys have a point with some of the kids where you're like, hey, we'd like you to put in an application for us to take this a step further? Or at some point, is there any other documentation they need to look at getting done at that point?
Yeah. So I think the application process is always a big thing. Because, I think like we've been talking about, that shows that you are very interested in us. Because if we say we are interested in you and we'll say, hey, we're going to offer you a spot, and it takes and you express interest verbally with us, but then it takes you 3-4 weeks to get the application in, then we're like, okay, how interested is he in our program? So I think the application process, whenever you can get that done as soon as possible, like that shows us like, okay, this is interested, because like eventually that's going to have to be a part of the process that needs to be done in order for you to get into our school. So that's obviously a huge one. And then if they were to send eventually too, like we'll need like transcripts as well to know whether or not we can actually get them in or things like that. So you don't always have to get in on your own to play at Cortland. Like we can help you as long as your GPA is reasonable. If it's in the 60s, obviously, like then it's like, well, that's not going to happen. But we have a great admissions office, and we have a great relationship with them, and we're able to help out certain kids that we really like get in. So I think transcript and then obviously the application process of it all are definitely two big documents that we look at when we're trying to get certain recruits.
Yeah, Coach can't probably say this outright, but every staff gets an amount of exceptions, what we call them, and they're always saved for D tackles. I'm going to crack that joke. It seems like they're always saved for a 3-tech or a nose. I crack that joke because that's always how it worked out in my career. But Coach, that's such a good piece of that. So let me ask you kind of a fun question here. Have the inquiries or the outreach exploded since you guys won the championship? Have you seen more than usual?
Yeah. So this past application or cycle. So this was the most applications that Cortland has ever gotten. And it beat like the previous record by like I think 1,000. So we'd like to think that
It's awesome.
it has a lot to do with football. But
It
it could be a
does.
bunch of reasons, but we like to say it has a lot to do with football. Yeah.
Coach, I'll say it. You guys don't have to say it. It's because of football. Every school that wins a national title sees a spike in applications. That's across the board at every level. It's just the way it works. People want to be around winners, and I don't blame
Absolutely.
them. That's why they don't hang out with me and Matt. So Coach, one more, we've got just a couple more questions for you. One of them being, when a kid does reach out to you, I know you talked about the information he needs to provide. How does he need to structure that email or DM? Because kids are not always the best at reaching out and putting their best foot forward at times via email, via Twitter, via DM. How should they word that? I'm not saying you got to give me a word for word template, but just kind of give me an overall outline of how it needs to sound.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing is like, just like the general like grammar stuff like that, like needs to be somewhat clean. And I think like punctuation, capitalization, like 'cause some stuff, you get an email and like their names like, lowercase j or lowercase z. It's like, okay, like, that raises a bit of a concern because it's like, how much do you actually care to do that? Or then it starts to become like, can we actually get them in here?
Yeah.
If that's the case. So I think just a general, like if you were going to apply for a jobs or whatever it is, like I would try to structure it, or at least have like the grammar, capitalization, all that stuff like in order when you do, create that email. And when I was growing up and I was trying to get recruited, I would always, ask someone like, hey, do you think this is like, how do you think this looks? So I think that's when you kind of go to your coach, your high school coach, and say, hey, do you think this is something that a college coach would read and say, okay, this kid's interested, this is someone that we want to pursue? Or is this like, hey, do I need anything to fix? And then, there's always like insight like that. It's always good to double check with someone else, because sometimes you may miss something just glancing over it. And you don't have to be ever embarrassed to do that either. I think, because it shows. Yeah, you don't have to be embarrassed. And once again, like, it shows your own coach or whoever it is that you're very interested in, like, maybe they can relay that to the coach or like the college or whatever it is. So, but just like a general, like, a clean email or a clean DM on Twitter. That's kind of like the main thing we're looking for.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't be embarrassed. Look, I work in the corporate world. I still have people check emails to big time clients. I do I do graphic design, all this other stuff. I do huge proposals. I make 4 or 5 people check it before I send it out. Yeah. Part of it's a CYA, and then the other part of it is like, well, if we all missed it, then we're all idiots. So we're at least in the same boat together. So Coach, Matt, what other recruiting questions do you have before I go to our famous last question?
Coach, I mean, I think we pretty much wrapped it up there. I mean, the school has to show interest. The kid has to be interested in going to that school. I've seen it so many times where kids want an offer, and the school steps up and the kid's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't know if I want to live there. Where is it? So the kid's not knowing even where the school is.
Yeah.
So as much as those say they want the offer, when they actually get offered, it's, do they actually want to go? I think that's a big battle. That's the big battle coaches always find. Coach, I do have one more question. You talked about players sending an email being the easiest way to reach out. A lot of times I dealt with it, no response, or a limited, hey, we'll get back to you, and no response. How often should the kids follow up? If they don't get a response, is that something they should hammer home, or get the point after 1 or 2 replies?
Or the coach, by the way.
Yeah. So I think, there's like, depending on the season where they do email, someone could be extremely busy or just, and it may have slipped their mind, or maybe they clicked on the email accidentally and then didn't get back to reading it. So I think following up maybe, a week to 2 weeks after, just to see like if they got their email, and kind of go from there. And it kind of goes for the coaches as well. I think you never want to bombard a kid with emails, because then that could make you look desperate, and then he kind of has all leverage or things like that. But the last thing you want to do is be, for lack of a better word, kind of annoying with the amount of emails you sent.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, I think just like a week or 2 weeks after, just a follow up quick email like, "Hey, coach, I just wanted to reach back out, see if you got my previous email. Really looking forward to speaking with you," or anything like that. That will almost always, I think, kind of generate a response from either the player or the coach. And then, as a coach, if you don't get a response after that, it's like, okay, we could probably start to move on there. It's probably not going to work. So I think like depending on where you are in the process as well, you could call them, I think. So if it's like late in the process and you're trying to narrow down your recruiting class, but it's like, we really want this kid, like we need an answer from this kid before we kind of do anything, then you can, maybe call them or text or call them. And then, if it doesn't go past that, then I think maybe, look at option A or B, or look at option B or C. So.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So coach, we always wrap it up with the same question. This is not going to be recruiting related. We ask every coach that comes on the podcast this: what is one unique or special thing that your program does that no one else does?
Wow.
It's always a tough question, and me and Matt always talk to give you a minute. But we ask every coach this question. One of these days, enough people are going to listen to the podcast where we're not going to be able to ask it. But what's one thing special or unique? And it can be, coach, this can be anything from on the field to off the field, culture, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So most of the go ahead, coach.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, most of the answers we get are off the field stuff.
Yeah.
They're completely not related to football. So, anything you guys do with the kids or with families or just as a program in general.
Yeah. So I think kind of that's a tough question. I will say I think the recruiting process where we're able to split up the kids and the parents at our level, I think that is something that's kind of helpful. But I would say just we actually don't really do much kind of chemistry building outside of football. We have absolutely great kids, and kind of the culture that our head coach has built, Coach Fitz has built since he's got there. The chemistry kind of takes care of itself, and I think that may surprise some people that because some coaches are extremely hands-on on trying to get their team to be a team, right, and to welcome the newcomers. And that's hard to do because some of the newcomers have a chance of taking your spot. So I think just our kids' ability to kind of see the bigger picture, and worry about the inputs and not the outputs. I think that is, he kind of built that throughout his time there, and I think that's something that's pretty unique that our players are just able to kind of take that on and see the bigger picture, and like we're all trying to work for the same goal. And whether he's the better man for the job or I'm the better man for the job, whatever it is, like just being able to see that, I think really, really helps. So I think, maybe not necessarily something that we do, but I think it's almost something that we maybe don't do that is kind of unique in terms of that. So I think, that is kind of the biggest thing. And it just comes down to just our players being great kids on and off the field.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Coach. We love those answers. It's our favorite question to ask because we know we're going to get something unique every time. Coaches do a really good job of stock canning some answers, and we've been there, and we've been those guys that have done it too, right? They're a very good team, and they prepared well. And we did, and it was a dog fight out there and everything. And that's not one that you can can a stock answer to, so that's why we love asking it every episode. So, Coach, we appreciate Matt.
I got something for that because I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
So many times as coaches, we try to force these ideas upon our program and that, hey, we got to do this to get inside the kids' heads. And I think what coach said is the most genuine thing I've heard as far as we recruit good kids and we're going to let those kids be who they are. And that's what makes our team chemistry successful. I think that's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
Thank you
Coach,
very much.
we appreciate you having on. If they want to reach out to Coach, what's your Twitter handle if anybody wants to reach out to you?
Yep. So my Twitter handle is Kyle Gallagher 23. So KYLEGALLAGHER 23.
23. Perfect. I got to follow you right here as well. So if you want to reach out to Coach on Twitter, go ahead and DM him, hit him up. Obviously, I'm sure he's happy to answer any other recruiting questions. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at theboarddrillpodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Twitter at boarddrillpod, TikTok, Instagram. We're on all of it. We're there all the time, kicking out clips and having a good time. Coaches, if you want to reach out to us, please do. We need guests. We need topics. We need all that. We're doing 52 episodes in 52 weeks, and we know that season is quickly approaching, and no one's going to want to talk to us. So, coaches, we'd love to have you on all summer long. Coach Gallagher, again, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Congratulations on being a national champion, and maybe sometime in the future we can get you back on the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the congratulations, and then really appreciate you guys having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.